All right. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Interact's Creator Stories podcast. As you know, I am Jasmine Solana. With me today, I have Martina Abraham Ilunga. Wanted to make sure I said it right.
You did.
We had a whole conversation about names right before this. So I was like, oh my God, did I forget? But I didn't.
Nice, great
Um,
job.
Thank you. Anyway, this episode is really interesting. And the reason for that is because I talked to you a couple days ago. We talked about your story, and you guys actually just launched. So you're kind of in this space where we talk about all the time. You're in the thick of it. And of course, I will want to follow up with you on this as we go on. But
Yes,
before we get to that part of the story, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, your business, and then go back to the start of it all and tell us what your story is?
absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here. So I'm Martina Abraham Ilunga. I am the creator and co-founder and CEO and a whole bunch of other things of You Had Me at Black. And we are a platform and community on a mission to reclaim the Black narrative. And we do so by passing a microphone to everyday people to share their true life stories in their own words. We think of our business in three ways. We have a podcast, we have a publishing arm, which is right now is our podcast. And that's what most people know us for. We've been running our podcast since 2016. We're about to hit our
Wow.
fifth birthday in May, which is crazy. And then we have our experiences arm. So we do live storytelling events, we do creative workshops, and a whole bunch of other things. And then we also have our studio where we partner with brands and agencies and organizations to create really compelling, human-centered storytelling branded content.
Mhm.
Um, and this week, actually, we just launched a new community. It's a digital community called The Kinship. And it's really meant for people who are looking for a creative outlet, but need a little bit of structure and nurturing
Mhm.
to get started. They're looking for a creative community. They're looking for some creative instruction. They want to get deeper into their craft. They're looking for just a little bit of inspiration. And as adults, that can be really hard to find. And so that's what The Kinship is for. And we just opened that up this week.
Exciting. How do
Yeah.
you how do you feel right now? I know we're gonna go back into the whole story. How do you feel right now?
How do I feel right now? I feel excited. Like I'm happy that it's Friday. It's been a crazy week with any launch
Yeah.
week of, very little sleep, just kind of running on adrenaline. But the response so far has been really positive. And it's really cool to see the, months of work out into the world and have people respond to it and be a part of it. And so I'm just feeling hopeful. I'm feeling grateful. I'm feeling hopeful. I'm looking forward to sleeping in tomorrow. So
Fun
yeah, it's
Saturday.
exactly. And I'm proud of what, the team and I have done so far. So it's a good feeling today.
That's good. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
when we talked the other day and you told me a little bit about your story, you mentioned that this entire business was actually your side hustle at one point. Do you want to go
Yes.
back to that time? Tell us a little bit about how you got started, and all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So my story with You Had Me at Black begins in 2016.
Mhm.
I was living in the Bay Area at the time. I was a recent transplant from the East Coast. And I had told myself that, I couldn't leave the Bay Area, the Silicon Valley. I was working in the
Mhm.
tech industry without starting something. I was like, this is where people start things, and I want to start something too. And a few years prior, when I was living in New York, my friend and I had an idea for something called You Had Me at Black. We didn't quite know what it was going to be. We knew we wanted to have Black folks sharing stories and exploring different topics and things that are interest to our community. But we just weren't able to, we weren't disciplined enough. We couldn't really kind of nail down on what that would look like, whether it was a book or a documentary or whatever. And so it's 2016, and I'm feeling kind of a creative itch. Like I want to get something off the ground. And my husband, he was my boyfriend at the time. He grew up in South Africa,
Oh,
and his parents are Ghanaian and from the DRC. And so, he has this whole diasporic background, and we're just walking around the Lake Merritt in Oakland, California. And I'm just asking him questions about his childhood and his identity. And I'm recording him on my phone just because like what he's saying, I'm like, this is really interesting. Like we should
yeah.
save this for later because you're like spitting some real like good stuff right now.
Yeah.
And I was like, ooh, I should make a podcast. And so that was really the start of it all. It was like, okay, gonna make a podcast. What should the podcast be about?
Mhm.
And I've always been someone who just loves listening to people tell stories from their lives. Like I was
Yeah.
the kid who would hate it. I never liked to play with other kids. I wanted to be in the room with the adults, like at their feet, just listening to all the things that they're talking about, their gossip, their stories from their lives. I loved when my grandparents would tell me about their childhood, my parents. And so that was really the inkling and the impetus for You Had Me at Black. We decided to make a podcast that is just where people are just telling stories in an authentic way,
Mhm.
and really as a response to some of the media narratives that are just very of black folks that are just very one dimensional and
Mhm.
singular and often negative. And we wanted to kind of give people the space to be their whole selves in a way that we're typically not in media. And I keep saying we, and I should say that I started You Had Me at Black with my sister.
Oh.
um, yeah, my younger sister, she is in entertainment. She, produces and writes and directs. And I didn't know how to edit like audio, and I knew she knew how to edit video. So I was like, if you can edit video, you can edit audio. Do you want to start this podcast with me? And so she was like, yeah, sure. And I kind of dragged her along
I love
along
that
this
though.
world with me. Yeah. Yeah. But from there, I side hustled You Had Me at Black. So I was working full time and I would record. I started doing research with friends and trying to understand, because I didn't listen to podcasts at the time. So I
Mhm.
was trying to understand, like, okay, how do you make a podcast? Like,
Yeah.
what makes people listen to podcast? My professional background was in marketing. So I was very much focused on like who my audience is. And
Mhm.
did, a little work in product development. So I really approached it like developing a product, like getting customer and market feedback, trying to hone in on like who are we trying to reach, where are we reaching them, and that's how we really arrived at all the things, at the place that we were. And I side hustled it for 3 years.
Wow.
So recording on nights and weekends, I would record at work in a conference
Just
room.
need a conference room, guys, 1 second.
No, exactly. Yeah. On the weekends, I finagled. I don't even know how I did this, but I got a key to the office. I was cool with people like, on the office management team. I got a key to the office,
Mhm.
and the marketing team had a room where they would film like webinars. And so they had a Yeti microphone, and they had some of that that foam on the wall to help soundproof the
Yeah,
room. It was literally just like a little closet, but they
yeah.
made it a studio. And so I just went there, and I would invite our storytellers on Saturdays, and I would just like book it out. Like I would be like 2-hour slots, and I would have people like in those slots, and it was just
Yeah.
it was like, yeah, and that's how we got our first season off the ground.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love
Yeah.
that. I love that, and I think it's so funny. I don't know, I just, like I pictured really that, like, "Hold on, guys, just gonna go in the room real quick." I know it wasn't like that, but it just
No, I
so
never recorded during the workday,
yeah.
but I would like take calls pertaining to the podcast during
Mhm.
the work. I would run out and take a quick call if I had to talk to someone, or I was trying to like book a guest and I needed to like get them on the phone.
Yeah.
So, you try to keep them separate, work and personal projects separate, but it's kind of inevitable that they always blend together. I think anyone who side hustles, can speak to that.
Yeah, I've been experimenting online, mostly just for fun, like on
Mhm.
Instagram, and it's just props to everybody who does 2 jobs at once because it's so much work, and
It is.
for me, it wasn't something that I was like, "Oh, I have to do this." So I just it's like on the weekend if I'm bored.
Yeah.
But if you are actively doing, obviously correct me if I'm wrong, you wanted to have that regular income, but still chase after your dream of getting this podcast up and running. So, what was that like, with your schedule and balancing even just like regular, relaxing time and so on?
Yeah, you can see my face right now. I mean, it was a lot. It was a lot, and I can't ever say that I got like good at that balance.
Mhm.
Like I was constantly trying to test and tweak and like try new things that would work for me. At one point, it was, doing everything at night after work and on the
Mhm.
weekends. And then I would get home and I would be exhausted just from work, mentally exhausted in meetings all day, running around the office.
Yeah.
And so I was like, maybe if I, give You Had Me at Black the first part of my day, right? So I'm really, instead of giving it like my crumbs when I'm exhausted at the end of the day, let me start my day. So I decided to go to bed earlier and wake up earlier and
Mhm.
try to spend an hour a day in the morning doing whatever I needed to do. And that worked for a little bit. But I mean, I burnt out so many times. I had so
Mhm.
many breakdowns. Um, and it was fun at first, and then once it was one of those things where it was like this train where you're like, okay, people are expecting things of me,
Mhm.
and I'm a I'm an overachiever. I put a lot of pressure on myself too. um it was really hard, and I wasn't doing it alone. Again, my sister and I started together, so she's not currently working on You Had Me at Black.
Mhm.
But we had a team of like friends who were all everyone was volunteering their time, and we were all exhausted. Like we
Yeah.
we definitely burnt out, and it got to this point where I knew if I wanted to see this become something more, and if I wanted to grow the community and really develop this into something that is sustainable,
Yeah.
I couldn't continue doing this 9 to 5 and 5 to 9 life. Like I needed to give You Had Me at Black my full attention. And so that ultimately led to me um, putting You Had Me at Black on ice and then preparing to leave my full time job and
Mhm.
then picking You Had Me at Black back up.
So
Which,
what
yeah, go ahead.
yeah, I just, like something came into my mind where it's like, I'm sure you went through this thought process of like, yeah, like, what do I do, right? Like, what do I do
Yes.
next? So,
Yeah.
when you decided that pivot in that moment, like, what did that feel like?
It was scary and exciting, but it was also freeing and liberating,
I love that. Mhm.
because I had received many messages you know, that I was taking the right step,
Yeah.
right? So I felt like I was getting confirmation in different ways, that, okay, I'm not, this sounds crazy, right? Like I'm leaving my job and this business that I'm working on has not made real money yet. Like we had thrown different events and we'd sold tickets, but nothing that could cover my rent or replace the full-time job I was leaving behind.
Mhm.
um, and so, you tell your friends that, and they're like, yo, you're crazy. And I do, but I'm not someone who's afraid of like risks like that. Like in, I believe when you're following your calling, you
Yeah.
know, will work out and in the way that they're supposed to. So I was definitely nervous, but I was more excited and I felt so relieved because at the same time, the job I was in was starting to become more toxic,
Mhm.
and the team that I was on and some of the people that I worked with, it just I could, if even if I didn't have You Had Me at Black, I knew I would have needed to leave that
Mhm.
team and that role in the coming months. And so it all kind of coincided together. And I took that as another sign, like, I feel like I'm getting pushed out of this role. And the
Yeah.
only other option is for me, like, I feel like that I have peace within my soul is to like give You Had Me at Black a try.
Mhm. I
And
love
and even after I quit my job, I didn't jump right into You Had Me at Black. Like I was exhausted. And so I took like 3 months off. I, was living off of savings
Mhm.
and took 3 months off that was really helpful just because I just needed that time to like decompress and I didn't want to
Mhm.
jump right into into like this entrepreneurial life that I knew would be crazy and have its ups and downs. And my husband, he's also an entrepreneur, so watching him on his entrepreneurial journey before I took the plunge into mine full time,
Mhm.
I knew what I was getting into. I knew what
Yeah.
the lifestyle is like. I knew how you have highs and you have lows, and
Mhm.
you're managing a team and like fundraising and all these things. I saw it firsthand. And so I was like, I think I need to chill before I jump into that. Like I need a buffer.
Yeah.
And so I was able to take that time, which was great. And then I hired a business coach,
Mhm.
who is kind of like an executive coach, but she worked with Black women who were entrepreneurs and people who were like looking to move into management in their corporate jobs.
Mhm.
And so she really helped me think through the like go through that transition of okay, I'm this passion project side hustler to like now I'm a CEO, right?
Yeah.
And like what does that mean? And help me think through all of the ideas I had around turning You Had Me at Black in this podcast really into a business. And
Mhm.
so we started to test different things, and she really helped me with some frameworks. And so I felt like I really prepared myself for the next step. And I didn't just jump right into it. And I
Mhm.
think that's been really helpful.
Yeah, I love that when you said that you took a much needed break, that makes sense. And I think anyone going from doing pretty much 2 jobs to putting everything into your own project, like, you do kind of need that break. Was there anything in that time besides, or well, let me ask this first. Did you take the 3 months and then you hired a business coach? Did I get that right?
Yes.
So in the 3 months, what did you do to decompress and, like, kind of help yourself back recover from
Yeah.
the burnout before
Yeah.
getting back into your project?
What did I do? So that it's funny. My last day at work was like June 28th. July 1st, my husband and I moved back home to the East Coast in New
Mhm.
York. I grew up in New Jersey. My parents and my family are all in New
Oh,
York and New
nice.
Jersey. Yeah. Are you from?
My fiance is from New Jersey.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
Yay. Yeah. So it was just like, and it was summertime. So I just spent it, spending a lot of time with my family because I hadn't seen them for like months before we moved. So I was over
Mhm,
my parents' apartment every week, seeing my siblings, catching up with friends.
mhm.
I really at first I felt like I had to spend the time productively, right? And that's like
Yeah.
the kind of I'm just like, oh, I have to do something. I was like, maybe I'll learn a new skill. And one of my friends was like, and my husband were both like, you really need to learn how to just chill.
Yeah.
Right. So I was like, okay. So so I was like, all right, I'll have these really it was weird. It was weird. I felt like I had like this Stepford wife life. Like I woke up when I
Mhm.
wanted to and I went to the park and I worked out and I read a book. And before you know it, the 3 months were up. It's only 3 months of my
Wow.
life. But I was like, it took a while for me to feel comfortable resting and like learning what
Yeah.
rest looks like. And for me, that's a lot of sleep, that's reading, that's praying, that's
Mhm.
going to the park, Prospect Park in Brooklyn. And so I didn't pressure myself to learn or to work or to do anything. I
Mhm.
just did. I did all the chill things, which was really nice. And it was in the summer made it easy to do that too.
Yeah, 'cause the weather's really nice, you can walk outside. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just I like that how you said you needed to learn to actually rest because
Yeah.
I think even in entrepreneurial life, it's hard to, right? Like,
Yeah.
you don't really know what that is, and especially now everyone's working from home, so I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who forget to turn off their computer and forget to turn off their work brain because they're working and relaxing at home, and
Exactly.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I love that a lot, and I guess what would was there anything that you wish you did differently, or was that exactly what you needed to fully get yourself out of burnout?
I kind of wish that I took a longer break.
Ah,
Like to me, I
interesting.
thought 3 months, and I thought 3 months was going to be I was like, well, that's such a long time. Like, how
Yeah,
do I not work for 3 months? And now I'm like, I wish that I had taken a year off. Like, I wish that's
mhm,
something that I'd planned for. Like,
yeah, yeah,
and that I did. And now that like we're back up and running and things are moving and stuff, it's harder to take a long break. But
yeah,
I really do wish I had taken like a whole year.
mhm,
It felt crazy at the time. Like
yeah,
I wouldn't have done it then, but looking
yeah.
back, I wish I had.
I like that. I think, like, I don't know, it's just something that people forget, you to take breaks, you know?
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. We need to. Like
Uh-huh.
rest what I'm realizing is that rest is part of work.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
like
I
it's a
like that.
cycle. It's a cycle.
Mhm,
It's like just like we have 4 seasons in wintertime, everything hibernates and goes in and goes to sleep and then
mhm,
blooms in spring and then it thrives in summer. We're like that too. And so I try to think of my work in a cycle like that. And so
yeah,
that means being more intentional about factoring rest into my work week,
mhm,
factoring rest time into projects, with
mhm,
some of our
yeah,
clients and making sure that there's space between projects and making sure that when I give deadlines and I'm factoring in, okay, am I resting in this deadline or am I just trying
Yeah.
to like push through and get it to them
Yeah.
as fast as possible?
Yeah.
So it's something that I've had to learn in order to literally stay sane and literally to
Uh-huh.
be able to keep going, because my anxiety can be at an all-time high. And like, I've burnt out so many times that I'm like, I'd never want to feel that feeling again.
Yeah, it's hard. It's so hard.
Yeah.
So from there, you got your break. What was your transition like going from getting this rest and then jumping back into it?
Yeah, I was excited. I was nervous. It was a slow start, like
Mhm.
again, I was really cautious of making sure I don't want to burn out. So I want to be really intentional about how I do this. So what was that like? Yeah, so for me, I was nervous and I was just trying to take it slow.
Mhm.
I wanted to be really intentional about how I was building this, because when
Mhm.
I started You Had Me on Black, I'm someone, I just jump right in. Like, I don't know if you guys could tell, I quit my job without knowing what I was doing. Like, I'm like, once I decide I'm going to do something, I'm all the way in. I'm not much of a planner.
Mhm.
I'm like, we're just going to do it and we're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And having done that for 3 years and seen the how challenging some of that was, like, it was really rewarding. And I'm glad that I did that, because I think if I had planned too much, I might have scared myself from starting.
Yeah.
But I knew that this time around, I was like, I know what happened when I just jump right in. I was like, let me see what it's like to plan. So that's why I started working with this coach. That's why I
Mhm.
wanted to lay this foundation. I wanted to make sure that, like, when I bring people on, I can afford to pay them well. I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that, I wasn't biting off more than I could chew, and that, like, whatever we set out to do, we could execute that excellently and then build from there. Like, I
Yeah.
wanted to just make sure I wasn't trying to like boil the ocean and then failing at it and starting from, like, from
Grudge.
ground zero again. Um, so yeah, I was just really intentional about some of that planning. And so that was
Mhm.
figuring out, like, okay, what, really going back to our mission and our goals and what we're trying to accomplish, and figuring out like what are different revenue models and revenue streams, which ones do we think that, and I say we, my business coach and I, which ones do we think that I was well positioned to go after, or like, and then the other right now versus needing more time or needing more resources and support to execute, and just kind of laying out a roadmap. And
Yeah.
then we started to do some small like tests and things. And um, after I worked with her for 3 months, so it was like
Yeah.
it was 3 months rest, 3 months of working with her, and
Mhm.
then I was ready to kind of start picking things up again.
That's awesome. So then what did you launch from there?
But from there, we launched another season of the podcast, because by that point, it had been a year. We had been off the
Mhm.
air. And I knew that the podcast and that audience was like our primary customer base. So I had to make sure
Yeah.
that they were like engaged, they were excited about us still, they were still into us,
Yeah.
because I knew that from that audience and from that community would come a lot of the other opportunities that we wanted to explore. And
Mhm.
then also launched our, what I call the studio, where we work with brands on different projects. So
Mm.
that's where I kind of, you know, was able to hone in like what kind of brands are good partners.
Yeah.
Um, how do I find them? Starting that outreach, creating the pitch deck, doing some of that initial work.
Yeah.
And we were able to land our first client partner
Nice.
in March of 2020.
Nice.
Yeah, so those were like the two things that came out of that time with my coach, is
Mhm.
just creating more content and making sure that our community, like, we're engaging them and they have things
Yeah.
from us and we're top of mind, and then some of the B2B stuff.
Was that hard trying to re-engage the audience after taking a year off for the podcast?
I think the audience was ready. Like, there was a lot of excitement for
Mhm.
what we were doing and what we were putting out. I felt a little nervous coming back to them, right? Because it's like,
Yeah.
why have y'all been gone for a whole year? And it's
Yeah.
hard to explain, like, well, I've been I'm trying to get myself right so I can continue to serve y'all.
Yeah.
So I was more nervous, like, well, people still like us, like, but it went well. Like, I think, that season ended up performing really well, and people
Mhm.
received it well. And we've been able to keep going from there. So it went well, but I was definitely nervous coming back. Like, I
Yeah.
felt, yeah, I was like, hey, knock knock. That
It's me again.
is literally how I felt. Like it's us again.
I totally get that. I mean, I follow a lot of people online, and once in a while they won't post for like a week, right? And they'll be like,
Yeah,
"Sorry, I've been gone." And it's funny to think where you're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so scared to come back," but everyone loves a comeback story.
yeah,
It's always happened, like especially mostly with, I guess, singers is what I'm thinking of. But
yeah.
um, I think that is really scary, but people love it.
Yeah, they want to see, yeah, if they like what you put out, people want to see you do that. And so yeah, it was exciting. It was exciting. I think for us, we had before we took our break, did a whole Kickstarter campaign. We did a 5-city tour and we were doing live storytelling events and recording them and putting them on the podcast. And it was just kind of like we got to this point where we couldn't sustain the momentum because we just didn't have the resources. Like we didn't
Yeah,
have the funds, we didn't have the time because everyone was part-time doing this, like your nights and
yeah.
weekends. And so I was also trying to like people like, what took you so long to come back? And I was like, everything we did before we weren't ready for. Like we didn't have the infrastructure. So now we're trying to do this right so we don't like create all this cool stuff and then have to stop because we can't sustain it. So
Yeah, I remember when I first started here. I mean, we're still a startup, but we were really early in, and our CEO Josh, I remember him telling me like, "Hey, it's awesome that you want to work a lot, but I'd rather you, give yourself 100% and then take some rest rather than giving like 110, 120% every day,
wow.
and then you get tired."
Yeah.
Then we don't get anything done. And that was the first time I've ever heard anyone kind of advise me to do that because I think, I don't know, like at least like for me growing up, that's what was always said, right? Like you got to work
Yes.
really hard, you got to keep
Yeah.
going, you know, stop stop taking breaks, things like that. And so
Yes.
that was really crazy for me to hear, and so I totally identify with that. I think it's so important.
Yeah, and that's great that you said that was the CEO of the company?
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing leadership.
Yeah.
That's amazing leadership. And it's something that I have a team now
Mhm.
and I try to, make sure that like I say we need to move at the speed of our wellness.
Mhm.
Right. And that takes a lot of trust and communication. So I think like as a CEO now and having a team, it's like constantly trying to reiterate those values of like, we don't need to kill ourselves. We can get
Yeah.
this done. And we just need to make sure that like that we trust our teammates to do what they say they're going to do. And that
Mhm.
as teammates, we're communicating when we can't do something or when a deadline is slipping or whatever support we need to get things done.
Mhm.
And I don't, that's not very common in workplaces. And so it's something that like we are learning together and it's constant like reiteration and conversations around it. And it takes a lot of intentionality.
I think it's great too because you experienced the burnout. So now you're like, okay, in order for this to keep going, I can't let anyone else do that too.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, it's the worst feeling. It's the worst feeling. And so, yeah, I'm constantly trying to check in with my team.
Mhm.
I've even brought in like we've had sessions with a therapist who's like very into
Nice.
mindfulness and wellness and who has like led different sessions for the team and like helping them so they have the tools to check in on themselves because I think it's also something that we have to learn too. If we're always in go mode,
Yeah.
we don't stop to like do a scan of how we're feeling and how
Yeah.
our work is affecting us. And so I'm really intentional about trying to make sure that like everyone I work with is equipped in that way too so that we can all like take care of ourselves and like do good work because at the end of the day like none of this is we're not saving babies, you know. So it's like if we have to push our season back a week, it's okay,
Yeah.
right? And I think this year I've been really fortunate, even like the clients we've worked with, like
Mhm.
also just doing this in the pandemic, I think it slowed a lot of people down.
Yeah.
So we've been fortunate to be able to work through the pandemic
Mhm.
in terms of having work, because a lot of creatives have not had that opportunity.
Yeah.
But I feel like everyone that I've worked with on my team and other teams, we've all been on the same page of like, we're gonna slow this pace down. We're gonna get it done. and we're gonna like we're gonna make this work, but we recognize that there's a lot going on right now.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that. I think that's important, and I guess, like, my question for you from there is, you know, are you constantly trying to learn new ways to prevent burnout, or do you feel like you have a good method for yourself, and what is it?
Ooh, I feel like I'm constantly trying new ways.
Mhm.
I don't feel like I have it all figured out. Like one thing I have learned about myself, I need 8 hours of sleep. And I was not the person that got 8 hours of sleep from like once I hit college, I was like a 4 hour a night person all
Whoa.
through college. Yeah, I mean, I don't and then I'm like, this is why you felt crazy in
Yeah.
college because you weren't getting any sleep. But I was, that's what I was trying to get schoolwork done. I was all my extracurriculars. I wanted to hang out with my friends, and so I
Mhm.
always put that on the back burner. And even as an adult post college, I was like a 6 hour person. But there was a time there was like a 1 week where I got 8 hours each night and I felt like a whole new person. And I was like,
That's awesome.
wow. So like that is a huge priority for me. I know I need sleep.
Mhm.
And it's just I have to like that's a sacrifice that I have to sacrifice things to make that happen.
Mhm.
Um I also try to keep my weekend as much as I can,
Mhm.
especially Sunday. Like Sunday is a no work day for me.
Yeah.
And I make that for the whole team too. I feel like I'm Chick-fil-A. Well, not in not
Not because of the food, but
not also because they have issues when it comes to like homophobia and all of those
yeah.
things. But Chick-fil-A in that day, they're closed on Sundays. We're closed on Sundays, just so that the team has a day off and that like they're at least they're not working on. You had me at Black Stuff on Sundays.
Mhm.
Because everyone is like a freelancer on my team or like independent contractor. So everyone is like juggling different projects. And I was like, I don't know how you manage your schedule, but I'm not making you work on this day.
Yeah.
Um, and I would say those are my two biggest things. I think I'm also learning that I can structure my day. I can be creative in how I structure my day,
Mhm.
right? And I'm trying to pay more attention to my natural energy cycles so
Mhm.
that I can arrange my day in that way. Because
Oh,
at first I was like, okay, I'm used to working corporate, right? I'm used to
yeah.
coming to the office at 9, leaving the office at 6, having my evenings open.
Mhm.
And I'm like, And now I'm like, I realize that in the middle of the day, like I could work out and that feels really good. And I used to
Yeah.
never do that. I used to only work out in the morning or the evening,
Mhm.
or kind of like giving myself a break and maybe reading in the middle of the day. And then I have energy sometimes after dinner, unless like, okay, cool, I can do some of that work then. So I'm realizing that I don't have to stick to the same 9 to 6 schedule that made me tired before.
Yeah.
I can, like, if it's 3 o'clock and I'm feeling kind of sleepy and sluggish, like I can go lay down for a quick nap. I can read
Yeah.
a book. I can do something to rejuvenate myself and
Yeah.
pick up my work in an hour again.
Yeah.
So I think that's been cool. So that's something that's kind of what I'm in the middle of right now.
I really like that because 'cause you're, like, listening to your body and what it
Yes.
needs, and
Yes.
it's if it's telling you, like, "Hey, you can't concentrate right now for a reason, please go lay down,"
Exactly.
or, like,
Exactly. Whereas if I was in an office, I would push through and I would have to like go to all these meetings and like be
Mhm.
awake and super present, even though my body is telling me like, please sit down.
Yeah.
Please lay
Yeah.
down right now. So
Yeah.
I'm trying to, yeah, listen to my body more and work according to when my body feels the most energized and just giving it the rest when it feels like it is telling me that it needs it.
I think that's so good. So I actually noticed now that you said that, there's sometimes where I'll take a break and I'm just like, I just don't want to think, but I don't know what else to do. So I'll watch an episode of some show or whatever I'm watching and just like turn my brain off and just watch that for
Yes,
like an hour. And then I'll be like, okay, let's get back into it. And
exactly.
it's weird if you just allow yourself to do that, you don't realize it feels good and that you end up doing better work because you're taking that break versus if you're like,
Exactly.
I just gotta keep going."
Exactly, exactly. And I find you're right because there'll be times where, because I'm still producing stuff too, so I
Yeah.
still have to like write for the episodes, and then there's also like the business side, and sometimes it's like that mind switch can be
Yeah.
a lot mentally, and I'll find myself like needing to write something, and
Yeah.
I literally can't focus on what I'm writing, and like the creativity just isn't there, and it's just
Mhm.
like. this is a good time where, yeah, you need to turn your brain to something else or just turn it
Yeah.
off for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, okay, so now you guys recently launched this week,
That's the
and
kinship.
yeah, so what was that process like in, you have multiple parts of your business, the podcast is going well and you're doing more stuff. From what point were you like, okay, now I'm ready to pack on more? And what was that process like continuing on what you were already doing and then launching something totally new?
Yeah. So we kind of arrived at the kinship in for a few different reasons, right? I think like one is like we have this community that listens to our podcast, comes to our events, pre-COVID,
Yeah.
and when they were in person, that is just really eager about what we do, but we actually never formally brought the community together or like had anything that's like for them.
Yeah.
And we felt like, and we talked about like what are different things that how could we serve this community?
Hmm.
And it'd been a question that I'd asked for years. And last year, one thing I kept hearing is people really wanting to express themselves. It was a very charged year with the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and the racial uprising, and then the pandemic, and a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings, and people
Yeah.
wanting to get them out and not really having a space to, not some people having imposter syndrome. Like I had so many friends who had projects they wanted to finally get off the ground because they were thinking more about like what they truly wanted out of life.
Yeah.
And so we felt like we're a storytelling show. Like we're all about telling stories and we want to help people tell stories however they want to. And that was really the impetus for it. But
Hmm.
another thing in the background is there are a few ways that people typically monetize podcasts, and the bigger shows typically monetize through sponsorships and ad placements. And our show, while we have a good, listenership for an indie show, we can't like command the same type of ad revenue that these big network shows can.
Yeah.
And so ad sponsorship, one, I think it was we've always struggled to kind of convey our value to advertisers.
Hmm.
And even if we did, the amount of money that we get wouldn't be enough to sustain a whole team.
Yeah.
Right. And so we had to get creative around different ways of making money. So our live shows were one way in which we started to do that. And
Hmm.
it was like, okay, um, the community, the kinship was another way for us to think about like, okay, if we have these people who really love what we're putting out, would they be willing to support us financially?
Yeah.
And so that is how that was like another impetus for launching it. And so I did a bunch of research over the summer and into the fall. Like I would call people that were subscribed to our email list and I would just ask them questions. I had some hypotheses about what people might need, but I wanted to validate them. So I asked them questions to learn more about them, some of their needs, some of the things the ways they're looking to connect with other people, to connect with their creativity.
Yeah.
And then I would run some of our ideas by them, just to get like real feedback. And I asked them about pricing. I was like, how would you price this if you were to get this every month? How
Yeah.
would you price this if you had access to this every month? And I was taking a lot of, like I'd mentioned, I was a product marketer prior to being a full-time entrepreneur. So launching products is like what I know how to do.
Yeah.
And so I just applied the same process to this. So
Oh,
getting like my customer feedback, and helping to develop the product. And then we ran we ran a pilot. We did
mhm.
that for 4 months. We announced it only to our email list, which had a few thousand people in it. And then we were able to um, get together like a really, a small pilot, which worked out really well.
Yeah.
And during the pilot, we were able to keep tweaking the programming too. Like what hypotheses could we validate further?
Mhm.
How do we make how do we make sure that this is like valuable for the amount of money people are spending on it each month? How do
Mhm.
we make it sticky? And so after 4 months of that, we felt ready to open it up more broadly. And that's what we did this week.
That's awesome. I like I like that you pretty much what I heard throughout your whole story, even from the beginning, was you do a lot of planning.
Now I do.
But it's good
Before,
though,
I
right?
didn't in the beginning.
You like
Yeah.
to lay the foundation, which I think is super important. And my question for that is really just where do you start? Like, how do you know where to start? And I know you said before, like, you talk to a coach, but,
Mhm.
you know, if in any case somebody listening doesn't have access to that,
Yeah.
where would you start in
You
laying the foundation?
Yeah, I that's a great question. I mean, the internet is a great resource,
Yeah.
right? And so thinking about like this community, I started first with the people I knew around. Actually, I'm going to start with how I started with You Had Me at Black because I had no foundation, right? And
Mhm.
it was like, I think I want to do a podcast. I don't really listen to podcasts. So I started talking to my friends who I knew did. I went on Facebook and I was like, hey, who listens to podcasts?
Yeah.
Like, what do you listen to and why? And all the people who replied, I messaged them. I was like, hey, can I call you for like 15 minutes? And I
Mhm.
asked them, straight up, why do you listen to these shows? What do you like about it? And I learned so much about what some of these like key things that are important in a podcast, like making sure you're publishing
Yeah.
consistently, making sure that the format of your show is consistent show to show.
Yeah.
Um, Little things like that yeah, it makes sense, but I might have not known that had I not asked. And so I
Mhm.
usually start, I think because of like my marketing background, my interest in talking to people, I usually start by talking to people and kind of
Mhm.
seeing like, what do you want? Like, can I make this useful? And
Yeah.
then from there, I go and do research on what else. I also did this with the kinship. What else is out there? What other things that are like this is out
Yeah.
there that might feel similar, and try to identify the gap.
Yeah.
Like, where is that open space so that I know I'm differentiated and I'm not copying or mimicking intentionally or unintentionally.
Mhm.
I don't want someone to be like, well, how is this different than this? And me not have an answer.
Yeah.
Right. I need to know that, like, oh, they do this really well and we do this, but they don't do this one thing. And that's what we do. And
Yeah.
that's something that I learned through just my time in product and in marketing, and
Mhm.
how do you develop products that are remarkable. And so that's something that I take into this work too. So I always start with like, who is the customer and what do people need? How can I deliver something of value? And then what else is out there that might be meeting this need? And like, what are they missing? And can
Yeah.
I be the one to deliver that, fill in that hole?
That's awesome.
Thanks.
It's a lot of good work too. And
Thanks.
it's so important. I mean, I used to think people just like launched things and I didn't know that you should actually talk to who you're trying to launch to.
Mhm. And
Such
there's a whole and there's a whole buildup. Like a launch is usually there's a pre-campaign, right? Like
yeah.
unless you're Apple and you're just like, we're gonna launch an iPhone, you
Yeah.
know, and then people line up. If you don't have that audience built up, like Beyonce can launch an album in the middle of the night and then it's platinum the next morning because
Yeah.
she's Beyonce. But if you're starting off with no audience or a very small audience, you kind of have to build people up. So even building up for the podcast in 2016, we announced it in February and we
Mhm.
spent 3 months generating buzz. We spent 3 months
Mhm.
creating our our Facebook and our Twitter and our Instagram.
Mhm.
We were trying to get people to join our email list. We were giving out like teasers of the episodes and like some of the content that people can get excited about.
Yeah.
We tried pitching press. We didn't get any press before we launched, but we were reaching out to like journalists and reporters, like, look at this amazing podcast we're about to launch. Like, they're like, we don't care. But we were trying. We started, just talking about it to people. And the
Yeah.
same thing with the kinship. We had a short like pre-campaign period where we announced it. And then we were getting people excited so that when it's open, it's like, okay, you can come and join us now. That
Mhm.
wasn't when we were introducing people to it. We introduced them to it beforehand. And I think that's something that a lot of folks sometimes miss, or like they just
Mhm.
think that they put something out and that people will come flocking, but you
Yeah.
really have to like lure the people to you.
Yeah. 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 I agree with that. I'm learning that a lot also, and in our own work here, it's just like it's an actual science, I
It
think.
is.
Wild, but I
It
mean,
is. And it takes a lot of work. And
yeah.
when you see something has a lot of traction, just know that there is a lot of thought and practice and like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of work behind that
Yeah.
thing. Some things just go viral, but most things don't just go viral.
It takes time. Yeah.
Mhm.
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 I agree with that. Ah, nice. I'm trying to think if I have any last minute questions, but do you have anything else in your part of the story that you think would be cool to tell?
Do I have anything else in my part of the story? I don't. I don't think so.
I
I mean, I want to
it's
encourage.
always hard unless you ask like a specific question. It's like, I don't know. I don't know where to go.
Yeah, I just want to encourage, I guess, other creatives, other entrepreneurs, because, our journeys are never linear,
Mhm.
right? We can start something and then pivot and then start something new or pick the thing back up. And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. And the world puts pressure on us too to have
Mhm.
like a very clean story, right? Like you think of like Facebook, for example. It's
Mhm.
like started this in college and it blew up, and now Mark Zuckerberg is Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
And most entrepreneurial stories and creator stories don't look like that.
Yeah.
And I think we need to start paying more attention to what the norm is versus the exception,
Yeah.
right? And most people like I think they say it takes like 5 to 7 years for most businesses to like really take off.
Yeah.
And it takes most entrepreneurs, it takes them a couple to start and fail at a couple
Yeah.
businesses before they have their first successful business.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's like years and years and years of toil and working and trying to make things work. And so I just want that, that can be encouraging to someone who might be in the same position I am, and
Mhm.
who keep the days where it's frustrating or hard. Just know like you're not alone. This is what this journey is all about.
Yeah.
And you're not crazy and you're not doing the wrong thing, right? Because I think sometimes there are days where you're like, am I crazy? Like, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And you're not crazy. This thing is meant to be hard. It's meant to be hard, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it's persistence. The people that the things that stick are because someone stuck around to keep going.
Mhm.
And so I hope that can encourage someone that like continue to stay the course. It might look different from what you thought it would be, but it's still worthwhile and useful and valuable. And so I just want to encourage someone.
I love that. It's not gonna be as cool as what I'm gonna say next, but no, that was really, really good. I love that a lot. So then my last couple questions are really just a little bit more to get to know about you specifically outside of work.
Yeah,
So
cool.
what are 3 things that people don't normally know about you?
What are three things people don't normally know about me? I I used to be a cheerleader.
Whoa.
Yeah, I cheered actually from middle school through college. Like I was captain of my
Oh,
college cheer team, but I'm someone who, if I don't know if y'all can tell, I'm pretty monotone. Like my energy is very mellow. So
nice.
when people meet me, they're like, "You were a cheerleader?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I used to like love that." That
Yeah.
used to be my eat, sleep, cheer, repeat was like my life motto for 10 plus years of my life.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's something that a lot of people don't know about me. Um, I think I'm a lot sillier than people also think. Like I people are like, oh yeah, you have it all together. And I'm like, I really don't. And I'm a big goofball. I don't take myself very seriously. Um, and what's also something that people don't know about me? I don't know.
It's hard, I know. It's a hard
Yeah.
question.
Um, I don't, I'm not too sure.
It's okay, we could stick with 2.
Okay, yeah, we have two. I was a
Yeah.
cheerleader and I'm hella goofy.
I love that. My last question is just if you could give yourself a single piece of advice at the start of it all, what would it be?
Oof, if I could give myself a single piece of advice, um, it would be don't be afraid to think big,
I
and
love
don't be afraid to like embrace the bigness of what you're working on. I think I have a tendency to get like to scare myself,
Mhm.
like I'll be like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, that's too much. Like that's too big, or like I can't handle all of that.
Yeah.
And I think if I hadn't been afraid to think big, you had me at Black might have looked differently like
Yeah.
sooner,
Yeah.
but for a while I was definitely like, I can handle this little podcast,
Yeah.
and so it's definitely something I'm also trying to work on with myself too. It's just like that belief that I can do it too.
Yeah.
Being a woman, being a Black woman, the world doesn't tell you that, but I
Mhm.
definitely can. Like now I wholeheartedly believe that. And I wish I felt some of this confidence in myself then, but it's nice to have it now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's never too late, but I think that's a
Exactly.
good piece of advice because I mean, I've talked to so many people and they're just like, "Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I wanna do it," or like, "So and so said it probably won't work," and, you gotta stop listening to those voices and just be like, "Just do it."
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Because there's gonna be so many more people who tell you that you can't do it or you shouldn't do it, and oftentimes that's more of a reflection of where they are,
Yeah,
right? And their, a reflection of how they feel about themselves versus a reflection about, like, you and what you can actually do,
yeah,
and so it's just yeah, you gotta vet through those voices
mhm,
and that some of the feedback and advice you might get from folks.
yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Thank you for having me, Jasmine.
Of course, of course. Um, well, that's all I got for you guys, and I'll see you next week.
Cool, bye, everyone. Thanks for
Bye.
having me.